So, thank you very much for joining us today. This session is a session that many of us have been looking forward to for a very, very long time. And it's a very necessary session as we talk about the future of cybersecurity in this whole world of remote working. Obviously, we all know COVID has been a total game changer, and suddenly, the proportion of workers that work from home has rocketed, and not everybody's going back to the office. And so, at the same time, this whole the whole bring your own device has added a lot of dangers and vulnerability. And how do we go about managing and securing devices and company assets in this kind of framework is crucial. Right now, the United States and other allied nations, including France, where I am currently, is being absolutely bombarded by adversarial cyber attacks. And we have a lot of concerns. We have concerns around insider threats. We have concerns around social engineering. We have a lot to talk about, and I'm surrounded today by three fabulous experts. And so what I'm going to do right now is that I'm going to tell you just a little bit about who we are for those of you that don't know the organization, the Institute. We are a global think tank based out of San Francisco. We're a 501c3, California 501c3. And we focus on anything of importance in the world of AI and cybersecurity. We look at issues of national interest and national security, as well as concerns with regards to critical infrastructure in particular, AI. We also have study groups on sustainability, different working groups and task forces. And the Institute, the Tortora Breda Institute, has also then launched the U.S. National AI and Cybersecurity ISAO, which in turn has a number of task forces and initiatives within it. So, before we start, I just wanted to welcome everybody in the audience that is interested in these topics to check us out on the internet, on our website, on our YouTube page, and join us if you feel that you can add value. That said, I am honored to facilitate and present this phenomenal panel. The first person on my presentation list is Chris Hadnagy. Chris stands at the forefront of information security as the founder and CEO of Social Engineer, marking a distinguished 19-year career that introduced the world's first social engineering framework. His pioneering spirit led to the inception of the first podcast dedicated to the subtle art of security, further cementing his status as an innovator. Chris's commitment to social good shines through his role as founder, executive director, and board member of the Innocent Lives Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to working closely with law enforcement in unmasking anonymous child predators. An accomplished author, Chris has penned 5 seminal books on social engineering, with his most recent, Human Hacking: Win Friends, Influence People, and Leave Them Better Off for Having Met You. This work encapsulates his deep understanding of human behavior and its implications for personal and professional growth. Chris's educational contributions include his position as an adjunct professor of social engineering at the University of Arizona NSA-designated Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Operations. His innovative social engineering Capture the Flag contest has significantly raised awareness about social engineering threats. A global speaker, Chris has shared his expertise at high-profile venues, including the Pentagon, demonstrating his influence and reach. His collaborations with leading scientists, including a notable publication with Dr. Paul Ekman on nonverbal communication, underscores his commitment to advancing the field. Chris Hadnagy's work bridges the gap between human psychology and information security, offering innovative solutions to complex challenges and fostering a safer digital world. Warm welcome. Thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Thank you.
Dr. Ravi Changal is next on my list. Dr. Ravi is a visionary leader in AI and emerging technologies, currently serving as the Director of AI and Emerging Technologies at Compunal, and a respected council member at the Forbes Technology Council, which I also chair. Dr. Changal brings a wealth of experience to the discussion. With a distinguished career marked by achievements in AI-powered solutions, Dr. Changle is certified by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs at the Government of India as an independent director, showcasing his commitment to excellence in leadership and decision-making. Specializing in data and AI governance in healthcare from WHO, Microsoft Fabric Specialist, Generative AI, AI Security Copilot, AI for Good, Conscious AI Ops, ML Ops, LLM Ops, econometrics, and data science solutions. He bridges the gap between business objectives and technological advancements. At Compunal, Dr. Channel leads the development and implementation of AI in emerging solutions, driving organizational success through strategic partnerships and innovations, benefiting global organizations like the World Bank, Ernst & Young, Wells Fargo, John Deere, and Michelin Tires, and Mercedes-Benz, contributing to significant growth, customer loyalty, and record profit boosts. So welcome, Dr. Ravi Changle. And finally, Mary D'Angelo is a leading figure in the field of cyber threat intelligence, with a particular expertise in navigating the shadowy corners of the dark web. Based in Washington, D.C., she helps clients understand the ever-evolving threats lurking this hidden digital marketplace. D'Angelo's passion for cybersecurity goes beyond technical prowess. She believes dark web intelligence is a cornerstone of building robust defenses. And there, I completely agree with you. I'm so passionate about what your background is in that. I think that dark web is so often overlooked in an overall cyber strategy, and so your role in this is going to be really important. By analyzing information on these hidden forums and marketplaces, she empowers organizations to proactively bolster their security posture and stay ahead of potential threats. Her dedication extends beyond the commercial sphere. D'Angelo actively volunteers her expertise to nonprofit organizations like the Innocent Lives Foundation. By leveraging her dark web knowledge, she assists law enforcement in combating the heinous activities of child traffickers. D'Angelo's journey to become a dark web advisor is likely a blend of academic excellence and real-world experience. While specific details remain unknown, it's clear her expertise is a valuable asset in the fight against cybercrime. Beyond her technical skills, D'Angelo's passion for sharing knowledge is evident. She actively seeks to expand her horizons by engaging with others in the cybersecurity field. Whether it's advising clients or mentoring future generations, Mary D'Angelo is a beacon in the fight for a safer digital space. Wow, what a set of panelists we have today. I am really, honestly, humbled and honored to have the three of you here today. I feel that I need to go back to school in order to be on par, and I will do, I promise, at some point. So welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
So I would like to launch into this by just asking you very openly, really, now that the remote work landscape has evolved so much, what are the critical cybersecurity considerations that we need to start to consider? What's the first thing that comes to your mind that companies really need to do when considering securing this new environment with remote workers all over the place?
Yeah, so I think so I can take this one first. Yeah. So I think what was kind of interesting when we saw coming out of the pandemic, right? So we saw a high increase in insider threats. It was around, I think the stat is around 66% increase in insider risk, insider threat. And so that was related to when we started working remotely, right? And so there isn't a lot of study around that as to why that was the case, why there's a peak of insider risk. But if you think about the dynamics that have changed since working remotely. So in the past, we would work in offices and we would see colleagues and our bosses. And if we were having a hard day or something was difficult, our boss or manager would see that. And if they were a good manager, they would, respond to it and try to help out. But when we've noticed with insider threat, the majority of it is due to disgruntled employees and employees on their way out. And 88% of it has to do with financial motivation is why they do it, right? And so now that we have this shift of people working at home, we don't have that dynamic that we had before. So, we're more separated from our colleagues, our bosses. I mean, we do have Zoom, we do have calls, emails, but it's still not necessarily the same. So these people, if they are struggling, whether it be personal or professionally, they feel, and this is what I think is like, they feel more isolated, more alone. And those types of people are more vulnerable to, like initial access brokers or threat actors out there who are trying to gain their knowledge, their credentials, for their nefarious activity. And so you can imagine if you are someone who's working at home, you're kind of disconnected from the rest of your employees. You feel alone. You come across different Telegram sites, or maybe you're prowling the dark web. You might see initial access brokers, offering to purchase your credentials for the company that you work at, and because of that, you may be more apt to give into that. As before, you probably wouldn't have thought twice about it. So that's something more nuanced, but something that I've been thinking about recently as we've moved to more of a remote place.
Yeah, that's really sobering statistics and powerful insights. So thank you for those. And I will pick you up on a question in relation to what you just said. But I just saw Dr. Ravi unmute. I think that he'd like to jump in.
Exactly. Hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yep, loud and clear.
Right. So, what exactly currently we are facing the challenges, and when it comes to remote work around, apart from what exactly we have been discussing is when we are working on hybrid modality, it brings in complex supply chain interactions also. By default, remote work increases the reliance on third-party vendors and cloud services. And apart from that, if you talk about supply chains, it can introduce new risks. If I talk about organizations, they can even overlook the need for to secure and monitor the flow of the data across these interconnected connected systems. So the propensity of getting exposure to risk is becoming higher when it comes to the multi-vendor kind of interactions, and the society at the large, and let's say the professionals who are working in remote arena, they also have certain issues regarding their minor issues, like it could be secure configuration management, and it could be a data sprawling wherein the data being accessed and stored across multiple cloud services and devices. So there is a heightened risk of data leakage and loss of control over the sensitive information. Some more things which exactly I could see over there is working on insider threats. So we need to definitely think of something on behavioral analytics, like we call it EBA, UEBA kind of a framework, wherein user and entity behavior analytics can be done to detect any kind of anomaly which is there in the user behavior, and that could indicate a threat. Lastly, if you see, there could be certain issues when it comes to the framework of your handling the remote environments with virtual desktop infrastructure. There could be the risk regarding your infrastructure. It could be your code which gets the access to the particular hackers. It could basically your framework of your endpoints that could be at risk. So therefore, it definitely calls for a real-time approach in terms of having zero trust kind of implementation framework. And definitely, once we go ahead further, we'll definitely discuss on those best practices as well. But yeah, these are some of the additional aspects which exactly they come to play when it comes to the remote working environments, right?
Thank you, Ravi.
I'd like to add something to that too.
Yeah, please, Chris.
So if we look at the last 18 months, just let's say, right after pandemic ended, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile were all breached. I think Verizon was breached like 8 times. We are seeing a 550% increase in phishing activity, and that's reported from the FTC just in this country alone. Since ChatGPT was introduced in November of 2022, this statistic is ridiculous. 1,265% increase in phishing globally, because now phishing can happen in any language, because ChatGPT can translate things automatically and make it reasonable and very very realistic. I was just at a conference in Spain, and there was a couple law enforcement agents from Japan that were there, and said that when ChatGPT was introduced, they saw a massive increase in phishing in Japan, because now, before, a lot of the threat actors didn't speak good Japanese. Now that they can translate it using ChatGPT, there's no more problems with that. So if we look at phishing and vishing and smishing as one of the biggest threat problems, remote workers are targets for this all the time, because it's easy to target a remote worker. They don't have the security infrastructure that you would had a big corporation. We're dealing with our home routers. We're dealing with our home infrastructure, our kids running up to our computer, installing things, whatever it is. We're using our mobile devices on multiple networks. That creates insecurity. So these type of things are, I think, things that have to be considered from a remote and hybrid situation. And I say this as a company that from my inception, we've only been remote. We didn't start remote during COVID. I've been a remote company for 15 years. And but these things have to be considered even more so today because of the threat actors. And then the last thing I'll add is a lot of the breaches we've seen over the last 12 months have been due to supply chain problems, supply chain risks. A lot of big companies are getting hacked because of vendors they use, and those vendors are not secure. So supply chain risk is something else that has to be added to this conversation.
Yeah, I welcome that. I think the supply chain risk is massive. And I think,
And even adding to that, and when it
yeah,
comes to identity-based, social engineering attacks, I think Chris will be, taking it further. But those identity-based attacks are taking center stage these days. I mean, when exactly I was referring to certain reports, it was 583% increase in Kerberos roasting attacks in 2023 itself. If I talk about cloud security threats, they are 110% kind of increase, which is being noticed, in the current reports. And as you're mentioning on threats to supply chains and third-party relationships, uh, there is an increasing trend, obviously, in adversarial aspects in terms of exploiting the trusted relationships. And again, it's like over 200%, kind of a growth, which is we are seeing under the radar kind of exploitations. And also, there is one more thing which is coming in. Globally, there are elections going on. So, election security threats, basically, working remotely and then managing all these things also would be difficult to handle. So, therein, we need some kind of, mechanisms to, decrease the interactive intrusions, which is at a 60% kind of a rate, which is going on. Yeah.
so of all these threats that we're exposing right now that we're discussing, um, I just wanted to throw a question out. It might be difficult for a difficult one to answer, but what proportion would you say are insider in terms of actual attacks, malicious attacks? What proportion come from disgruntled insider employees, for instance, as opposed to people that consciously go to the dark web to actually buy credentials? Which is the bigger problem, would you say? And I'm asking, I'll ask that to Mary in particular. Um,
Um, as opposed to those who actively go onto the dark web with the intent of
exactly.
buying credentials.
Yeah, which is a bigger problem in your view?
Um, it's kind of hard to say. Um, I think when it comes to disgruntled employees, most of the time it has to do because of financial motivations behind it, right?
Yeah.
And so when they are struggling and if they see an ad or something, or like initial access broker selling something, then they might be more opt into purchasing that. But we do see, I mean, the dark web is just full of nefarious activity, right? The majority of the time we see ransomware groups popping up and down all the time. So it is kind of hard to say where it falls in, but the more ransom groups that we have out there, with the more resources that they have, the wider pool of talent that they're able to reach, they're more able to then reach out to insider threats, basically folks who have the credentials that they're looking for, to gain those. So they kind of work a little hand in hand.
And
Can I add something to that?
Yeah,
Carl?
absolutely, Chris.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what I find interesting about that question is when we look at also go back 5 years, the dark web wasn't as easy to access. Maybe it was a little more difficult or unknown how to do it. Now you download Tor browser even on your phone, and you can be on the dark web in seconds, right? So I think access to these things is easier for disgruntled employees. Plus, thanks to media, and this is important, this needs to happen, but thanks to media, there's a lot more knowledge and discussion about how threat actors are conducting their threat activity, right? So I think to Mary's point is if you have this disgruntled employee who's now, living paycheck to paycheck, and they hear that, wow, threat actors are paying thousands of dollars for a set of usernames and passwords, I mean, I think to back to Mary's point, like that's the motivator right there. So I think it's a 50-50 because the buyer needs to be out there saying, hey, I'll give you money. That motivates the seller to go, I'll give you the product, right? In
Yeah.
any transaction. So it seems like it'd be both ends.
We do not recommend downloading Tor onto your phones, by the way.
Yes.
Okay, good advice. Thank you. And in terms of the origin, the geographical origin of the attacks, I don't know if you guys can comment on that, on what you're finding. I'd be interested in also seeing the perspective. I know that Dr. Ravi, you're both based in India and in the United States, but I'd like to see also to talk about the comparison. So, what do you guys see? First of all, Mary and Chris, who are totally US based, what do you see the provenance of most of the cyber attacks and the malicious activity being from? And then I'd like to ask the same question pertaining to India to Dr. Ravi.
Sure.
You know what's interesting about that that concept, thinking about where they come from. It's global. It's everywhere, right? So let's I'll just give you one example. MGM got breached. We probably all heard about that $100 million loss. They arrested one of the threat actors right here in Tampa, an hour and a half from me, right? So it's hard to say that from threat actor groups, are they coming from a particular country? Okay, I don't think we can label that. Now, when we're talking about nation state attacks, and if we're looking at it from an American standpoint, we're looking at Russia, China, and the Middle East, right? So Iran or something like that, where we're seeing a lot of those threats. The country of Georgia is well known for hosting massive vishing talent. And I'm sure Dr. Ravi will talk about this. India is one of the highest targets in the world for vishing scams. They're actually the number one where their citizens have fallen for vishing scams, but America's number 2. So
Wow.
Where are the attackers coming from? Sometimes from right within the country that's being attacked. Right. So we're seeing that all over. I'm not sure if she probably has more information on threat actor groups because that's her specialty.
Well, I think it's good to differentiate between state-sponsored threat actors and like the criminal ransomware groups, because if you're talking about criminal ransomware groups, like Chris mentioned, that's all over the world, and sometimes they can also be state-sponsored as well.
Yeah.
But when you're talking state-sponsored ransomware or threat actor groups, those generally are what you would think in Russia and China, in those types of areas, and so. Yeah, and then of course, if you dive in a little bit deeper, they have very different motivations, and so who they go after, as opposed to what the criminal threat actors go after is very different, with different tactics and techniques. So,
Thank you, Mary. Ravi.
Let me give a clear understanding in terms of interactive intrusions. First of all, I'll discuss what levels of technological and, let's say, industrial targets they are having, and what is the component, in some kind of percentage and factual understandings. So if it comes to interactive intrusions with respect to the industry, or let's say the region specific in industry and domain workarounds, you'll find that in North America there are around 61% kind of interactive intrusions which are there with respect to the region. If I talk about Indian context, it's around 7% only. The major targets are technology, that is around 23%. 15% belongs to telecommunications. Financial sector, if you see, there are reports which are published and they say that around 13% is the interactive intrusion with respect to the industry and financial domain. And as I mentioned, the other East Asian, regions, basically they contribute around 5%. 1% is basically coming in from, the African countries. And if I talk about Australia, it's around 4%. So this basically in terms of a kind of a e-crime interactive intrusion. And let me tell you that when it comes to the adversary and how exactly in what minutes and timelines, they try to give it. So they gain the legitimate credentials within 39 minutes. They start with a brute force attack. They drop legitimate file, drop two discovery tools, blah blah blah. So it's like ongoing process. So it's like for from the login intrusion, wherein it begins the case to adversary over a watch alert kind of a framework that alert is being generated. It takes around 15 minutes timeline for them. So if I talk about uh, the current trends and let's say how exactly the what kind of industries basically the access brokers are playing with in terms of advertisements and bringing their particular intervention over there, we'll find that academic industry plays a vital role over there, wherein when it comes to the academic workarounds, they are targeting, with the ads and all these frameworks, easily, the kind of the targets. If I talk about the other aspects in terms of uh, the Latin focused, adversaries which are being identified in 2023. So Latin America, Odyssey Spider, Robot Spider, Squab Spider, they were all, identified as the major, what we can say, uh, uh, F society kind of tooling framework which they were using. So it's basically they are targeting financial services, retail, hospitality, and whatnot. So the origin basically is available, on the reports that when it comes to Squab, Spider, where exactly they were originated from and to what level they have impacted. I don't know. Within this level of discussion, we can discuss all these aspects, but yeah, there are already published reports on well identified, interactive intrusion frameworks which are being, placed by most of these adversaries, and where they are impacting right from academic to media, what is their contribution, and the incident counts also is also, published. So these kind of things are there. So prominent things are academics, retail, professional services, technology, manufacturing, etc. And not only that, if I talk about the context which exactly we see, though India is prone to have these kind of attacks, but when it comes to the actual incident mapping and all, it's around a 7%, mapping which is there for them. So recently we have also seen how exactly NSTM has, released the framework map, measure, and manage. So that kind of framework definitely would be helping us to further mitigate, identify, and prevent us from these kind of attacks. Spear phishing is basically the major threat in India. So that's where I would definitely say yes, that is being there over a period of time, and they are we are, soft targets as well many times.
So in relation to that, uh, to what extent are you guys aware of international collaboration? Because obviously, what we're saying is cyberspace is not is without borders, right? It's the world is one, as one. There's no frontiers in cyberspace, right? And so it would imply that really, as much as possible, full collaboration needs to occur between nations. And I don't want to divert too much, but this is quite important. What, to your knowledge, to what extent is that happening satisfactorily? Does anybody want to take that?
I wouldn't mind taking that from a law enforcement perspective, because that's where I have a little knowledge because of my nonprofit. I got to say, it's a pleasure to work with the men and women in law enforcement, because when it comes to protecting children and stopping child trafficking, I've seen a lot of collaboration between law enforcements globally. Right now, one of the main countries that is exploiting young people and sextortion scams is Africa, on the Ivory Coast. And there are law enforcement agencies around the globe collaborating to fight that and to end that. When you see trafficking rings coming out of South America, those countries will collaborate with America in trying to stop that. So from that aspect, I'm seeing large collaborations both on the cyber realm and in the physical realm from law enforcement to stop those type of cyber crimes. I'm not sure if Dr. Avi or Mary have anything on the dark web.
Yeah, I can add to that from more of like an industry perspective. So, threat intelligence is most effective when it's being shared, right? And that's common knowledge when you're working with intel folks. And so, what's really good to see, at least what I've been seeing, is private and public companies who have come together and have maybe like Slack channels or group channels across globally, right? So like if it's an oil gas firm in Texas, they would have relationships with one in Europe or something like that. And so from that perspective, from an industry perspective, it is, I would say, I mean, I do think it could get better, but there is strong communication there.
Thank you. So now,
And
go ahead, Dr. Ravi. I think you've got.
please go ahead. Please go ahead, Carlo. Yeah.
No, I was going to actually move to answering a question from the audience. I have Tyler Mantle. Hello,
Okay.
Tyler, and welcome on this session. And he puts across a very interesting question. As artificial intelligence automation tools become more prevalent, we observe their adoption not only in large corporations, but also increasingly in mid-market and smaller organizations. In the context of cybersecurity, are we witnessing a similar downward market penetration of advanced security tools and threats? Would anybody like to take that?
Probably a
Definitely.
Dr. Ravi one, right?
Go ahead.
So let me take it one by one. So let's identify what exactly is the need of the hour and where exactly the challenges are coming from. So as you rightly mentioned, Tyler, that AI-driven automation tools are becoming more prevalent. Uh, both the sides. One basically from the adversarial sides, or let's say the attacker side, and let's say it comes to organization, we are also having the counter attack mechanism. GenAI is making it very easy to use kind of framework when it comes to any prevention of spear phishing, or it could be a cyber security principles if you need to put into action. So now let me give you the entire perspective of it, how exactly we should begin on it. So before we go ahead, we need to identify what are the components when it works, or when we work on either on the hybrid mode or a remote mode, or basically work from office in any domain, in any industry, and let's say with respect to any modality of working culture, we need to understand what are the components which are at risk. So when it comes to the components, you are aware that it's your device, it's your endpoint, it could be your infrastructure, it could be a cloud environment, anything could be at risk. Now, for every component, there has to be a particular, maturity level of framework which should be there in terms of having best-in-class practices of uh, having a cybersecurity in three ways. One, it should be predictive in nature. It should predict that where exactly and when exactly we're gonna be attacked by these kind of players. There is a for sure the mechanism which I can demonstrate. Second is a responsive mechanism. So incident has happened and now what to react accordingly. So there is a proper maturity framework for that as well, regarding any component which I mentioned. And third is basically which is not responsive, which is not predictive, but it's kind of a kind of a transformative, I could say, or it could be basically a kind of a proactive mechanism or preventive mechanism we need to work with. Everywhere these three different types of mechanisms we need to employ. And when it comes to maturity stages, highly optimized stages, if you talk about, the tools are readily available now with security copilots kind of things. What is security copilot? It's like having add-on layer of generative AI or large language modeling, wherein you can get the context. Earlier we were able to just only get facts and figures, some kind of keywords which were faced, and basis that we identified that this mailer is a kind of a suspicious one, this particular interaction is a suspicious one. But these time we identify we can leverage knowledge graphs, we can have entity relationships, using graphical modelings, and basis that we have now the power of large language models, which we can create a defensive mechanism to understand the context in the same way. At the same time, the attackers are also using the same context to build more and more rigorous, kind of spear phishing tools. So it would be kind of a mechanism which will be go hand in hand together, because whenever it is happening, it's happening for a reason. Why exactly? What exactly is the solution for this? We should understand tools and techniques. They will completely get evolved, not only for organizations, for hackers also. And we need to have a proper mechanism wherein whenever they take an admission to their colleges for a degree program, we should be having a modeling wherein we can identify their traits and we can identify them as a hacker. So that
Okay.
terminology, when they get, when they start admit, getting into the schooling or any online certification they go for, working in computer science, we should have a mechanism that this particular student of mine is going to be in that trait, right? So that kind of modeling we require, which is very preventive thing, because it's not hacking we need to get devoid of, it is hackers we need to get devoid of. And why a person become a hacker? Because of three reasons mainly. Either he's having fear of failure, second he's having a greed so that he can make some money, or third is basically it's very logical but just for fun, so there are three activities, or let's say three things we need to identify, and I need to track them. Like Chris will be talking more on that particular aspect, that how we should do the social engineering, we should get to know these kind of people, because that is very important. Then you have the secured layer of tools, technology, which I mentioned, have a preventive mechanism, proactive mechanism, and predictive mechanism. And on the top of it, we have a secured environment framework. We call it, let's say, highly standard maturity model, which we can have in the optimized fashion. When I say optimized fashion, it means that it is 100% automated, and there is an active layer of all the recent tools and technologies, including blockchain to your quantum, and including your artificial intelligence. Hope
Thank
that
you.
answers
Thank you,
your question.
Ravi. That's very, very, very insightful. Chris and Mary, would you like to add to that? Go
Yeah,
ahead, Chris.
sure. I mean, I could add
Mary,
to it.
Mary first, yeah.
Yeah, so just sort of tangentially related to that, So what we see, so when ChatGPT came out, then of course the bad guys had to create their own version of it called Fraud GPT, and that one was used to create very very sophisticated either malware strains or phishing type emails at a quicker time. And so those, so what they could use from that would be perfect for their mid-market targets.
Very good.
And if we just think about two examples, that there was a breach in Hong Kong where the threat actors used deepfake technology, AI technology, to create something called a digital skin. So not just a clone of a person, but like a mask that you would wear while on a video call. And I can wear this mask and look like Dr. Ravi, right? And then I can clone his voice. And when I talk, I would sound like Dr. Ravi. Well, they did this to a company in Hong Kong, and they digital skinned the CFO. And then he got on a video call with one of the subordinates and said, "We have a new client. We need this wire transfer today. $25 million with a 10-minute phone call and one digital fake." And the second thing I was going to say is we found a group, a vishing group in India that's using an AI-based software that removes their accents, so they sound American. Attacking America, right? Because we've kind of been trained, like, oh, if we hear an accent, be a little wary. But now it's like, oh, well, here's this AI technology, removes accents, and now there's that trust factor of, oh, you sound just like me, so I can trust you, kind of thing. So those are two areas where I've seen from Tyler's question where artificial intelligence is being used by threat actors to damage.
This is really, really concerning. We're living in scary, changing times, and we don't really, it's hard to find your footing because things are changing so rapidly. I'd like to bring the conversation a little bit more back into the remote work. I mean, everything is relevant to remote work here, but I wanted to talk to you about hardware as well. So, there's there's a concern about what hardware, to bring your own device. There's a concern around also what network people use when they work from home and what devices they use. Recently, I've been talking to a number of experts around the backdoors that exist in, for example, transformers, and how they can affect operational technology. We've seen, the vulnerability that, for example, that port authorities have with cranes that are manufactured in China, for example. Not to blame China every time, poor guys, but they are kind of seen as the adversarial nation at the moment. And in some ways, it's probably justified. In some ways, maybe not. But anyway, that's by the by. But at home, in America, I think there's been some good precautions, and Huawei and ZTE are not so prevalent, really. But in other countries that are closely allied to the States, home devices generally are Huawei and ZTE. So what level of, and for example, American multinationals rely on their workers and their VPs in country, in the UK, in France, in Germany, elsewhere to have safe technology. Well, do we have a concern that these could be backdoors, and how do we approach that thought?
I'll say I have a giant concern about that. I mean, you saw just Huawei was like banned from their products being sold in the Pentagon, right, in the U.S. government. They found backdoors in those things. The problem is they were in there for years, right, and probably backdoored. And then when they found it, they went, "Oh my gosh, well, we need to not do that anymore, right? So get rid of those devices." But how much information did they have? I mean, I'm gonna throw Mary a spotlight here because I just learned from her yesterday. She put a blog out about this Chinese group that spent 5 years inside of our power grid here in America, right? So no one even knew for 5 years. They're just sitting there dormant. And I don't remember the whole story, so Mary can tell it. But we're seeing backdoors and all sorts of technology happening, and every day we're also seeing new exploits coming out where backdoors are being found, and O-days are a massive business right now, globally, not just in this country, but globally, where they're finding these backdoors and either in software or hardware, and then using them to gain access. And home base, a lot of times we're not going out and spending $3,000 on our router, right? We're getting one at Best Buy. So we're
Yeah.
getting whatever's there, whatever we can afford, and that presents a risk.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And even if it's a known American brand, you don't know where it's actually manufactured and whether it's
Right.
relabeled, rebranded, OEMs.
Mhm.
So, Mary, have you say, and then I'd like to ask you what corporations should do. What's your best advice? Should they take care of each employee's home settings and send them a router, or does it get too complicated? Is it unmanageable? What's your best advice?
Yeah, so that gets kind of tricky too, right? So you want to make sure it's seamless for the employees. It's not difficult for them when they're trying to work remotely. Um, I think, I mean, just based on the work that I do, I'm really big on intelligence driven operations, especially from a cybersecurity perspective. So if you have a strong understanding of, your industry, your sector, your company as a whole, and then you're able to sort of track those ransomware groups or threat actors that are known to target you, then you can build defenses that are more catered to what the threat actors TTPs are, right? So that that would be, like, I would say, a start is like focusing more on becoming intelligence driven, and then work from there, and then also work with the employees too, like see what's working for them. Education is probably a big component as well. I think the more you're able to educate employees about the risks associated with certain things, then you'll be able to mitigate a lot of it as well.
One thing that seems catastrophic to me at the moment is the fact that there are blurred lines on devices that are used both for your profession and for your home use, right? Because home utilization is more likely to put you in a situation whereby, for example, spyware is installed, that sort of thing. And what I've seen, because I like to toy around in dark web intelligence as well. What I've seen is an enormous amount of corporate accounts, credentials get stolen and posted for sale on the web, on the dark web, because like malware got placed in like Raccoon malware or
Yep.
Redline or those
Yeah.
things, and they just sit there for months and they just collect all this intel, and then eventually they collect all I've seen like all corporate credentials go, as well as their PayPal and their banking details and everything. And uh, I was told, and you can confirm it, Mary, you probably know this for a fact, but nowadays they can actually sell you the credentials as an open session, so that you can circumvent multi-factor authentication. So any comments on that, guys?
I mean, yeah,
Go ahead,
carry on.
Ravi.
So, my 2 cents on those aspects, like it's not only on MFA and the other frameworks which we use, but also if I talk about the entire cloud security, and also I have some pointers to add here for the entire audience. Like, number one, we need to work on endpoint protection and management, wherein we can have we can also leverage advanced algorithms for as I mentioned, we can have predictive threat analysis and automated response generation, so that there we can definitely use AI and machine learning. Zero Trust Network Access, ZTNA kind of framework, which replaced the entire traditional VPNs by verifying every user and device. That basically would be into consideration. If I talk about identity and access management, uh, we can have blockchain intervention, wherein we can work on decentralized and secure identity management frameworks. Biometric authentication, it's I mean, when it comes to the remote, it definitely it's going to be not that authentic one, but when it comes to facial recognition and other things, we can definitely make sure of we can use, as Chris was mentioning, in terms of deepfake, and also voice recognition is now required with that secured environment, especially with IAM. VPN network security, if I talk about that, needs to be fortified with software defined perimeters, right? And next generation VPN frameworks. And lastly, I would like to add that when it comes to firewalls, when it comes to DLPs, uh, we need to have proper intrusion detection and prevention mechanisms in addition to it. It can be done using proper network traffic analysis, bring your on device, that kind of a framework which already there are there, and zero trust kind of integrations when it comes to the kind of activities we are managing for our professionals. that definitely would be helping us to have a secured environment, working from home or working from anywhere, with right set of antivirus and anti-malware solutioning frameworks. So that's from my side on the kind of securing every aspect or every component once again. But yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, I mean, as we see people, since people started working remotely, we have seen like credential theft just grown exponentially, and that's due to the fact that people are clicking on phishing links that will then download the malware that will later steal the logs, the data logs. And so, I mean, that's where for me, it's like a big proponent with like dark web threat intelligence is because having that visibility, you'll be able to have the visibility to see those type of stealer logs that exist out there, so that you can be able to act upon it either pre or post incident.
And I'll add something to that, which will answer the question that we just had come in, or the comment is, from something that was Mary saying in the first answer, and something you mentioned, Carlo. I think it's impossible to expect the company to say, okay, here's your whole security setup for your home, right? Because employees leave, or they, that's a lot. That's a lot, and it's also not fair to make security so difficult that your employees are having a hard time getting work done, because they'll find circumvent paths for that, right? That's what always happens. If you put a block in their way, they're going to find a way around it. But with that said, I'm a huge proponent of zero trust and of MFA. But I'll tell you this. We bypass MFA every day here at my company for our clients, right? It's not that hard. So we do this as a test for our clients to show them how you can't just make that your savior. Now, does that mean don't have it? No, you need to have it, right? But I think, and I'll give you an example, a quick example from our company, and we're small, so I know this might not apply for like the really large companies, but we don't allow our employees to work from public networks, right? Yeah. So we have things locked down, and if you do, you have to be on a VPN that we own. We make our own VPN. We create it. We gave it to you. You have to be on that VPN. We enforce the use of password managers that are controlled by our admin here. We have DLP software that locks things down. So if someone puts a USB in their computer and takes files off our servers, I'm alerted and we're told, hey, this person's taking files. We have confidentiality ratings for certain documents that don't allow them to enter email at all. They can't even be emailed. Right. So and I can go on and on about the things that we do, but we do these things to make us not the low hanging fruit. Does it mean that we're perfect? Does it mean, like Mary said, I can't have some disgruntled employee be an insider threat? No, that can definitely happen. But if I make it more difficult for the threat actors, then maybe they'll move on to a company that's easier. Maybe.
Even encryption mechanism has to be sound enough when it comes to data security and all, because I think we have been discussing devices, endpoints, everything, but the major component is the data. So what if everybody is well aware, well trained, in terms of having proper data security while having proper mechanism of encryption, right? It could be their files, it could be their, the entire ecosystem of their cloud systems. The data remains same even if they attack. Data loss is not there. So encryption is the another area where we can definitely have the directions and discussions further, right?
Carlo, can I have one more thing?
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Okay. This is something that's kind of popped in my head. That's something I should have been talking about as the human hacker guy, right? But a culture of security awareness is also very important, because we can sit here and talk about technology all day long, but at the end of the day, your technology could be rock solid, airtight. But if your people don't know what to do when they get a phishing email or a phishing call or a smishing attack, if they don't know how to report it properly, if they don't know what mechanisms to take that action, a cybersecurity educated culture inside your company can make a huge difference. And I think what's important to note about that, it cannot be based on fear. It can't be a fear-based culture where they're afraid to do anything because they're going to get fired, or they're going to have punitive damage, or they're going to be embarrassed in front of their fellow employees. A good cybersecurity awareness culture is one that fosters a communication and an agreement between all parts of the company, from the C-level down, to foster this environment that I want to help the company stay alive. This is what I'm motivated to do. That kind of a culture, I found that you can use all the things that Dr. Ravi said, Mary said, I said, you blend it with that culture, and now you have a really great company that I won't say impenetrable, because nothing's impenetrable, right? But I will say that it's a much stronger company against these threat actors.
I think you're 100% right. I think that culture around this and around social engineering is just fundamental. So in terms of as we begin to wrap up, and this has been an incredible session already, and we're only like touching the tip of the iceberg. We probably will have to have multiple sessions to do it justice. But in your opinion, as we wrap up, what would you say are the biggest pointers of advice that you would give corporations in terms of securing the workforce? I mean, we've given a lot of advice already, but if you really want to crystallize it, um, because and be specific around how important, whether the focus should really be on the human side, on the understanding these insider threats from a human perspective, a culture perspective, or better utilization. Dr. Ravi mentioned end user behavioral analysis, which is becoming a great tool. And any advice that you can give around what are the cutting edge, newest tools that give companies the best chance of success? Is there anything new that's just coming through that you really want to like give a shout out to?
Can we go another hour? Can we go another hour? Because you asked like the most loaded question with 8 minutes left.
We're all like jumping in.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary. You go.
You got about 2.5 minutes each. Go for it.
I mean, just for me, I mean, I've been kind of emphasizing this throughout the conversation, but really, I think it's really important, and what I think companies should really start looking at is becoming more of an intelligence-driven operation when it comes to a cybersecurity perspective. And so, that all the way from the top down, like, so leadership will have the intelligence that they need to know, okay, what are some of the gaps, like from a cybersecurity perspective that we're dealing with? Is employees clicking on phishing links more so? Are they, picking up calls that they shouldn't be, or answering calls, engaging with threat actors that they shouldn't be? Okay, so now we know we need to allocate more funding into those types of training awareness programs for those employees. And the same goes too, like if you see like if you have a strong understanding of your industry, your sector, your company, okay, who are the threat actors that's targeting me? What are their TTPs, right? And then you're able to then prioritize your team's time into building strategies to stop it. So, I'll always push that, but that's, I think, is probably one of the most important things companies should start doing.
I violently agree with you.
Dr. Ravi, you want to?
Yeah, Ravi, get next.
From my side, it's the same standpoint, because I had been lobbying for right data maturity. Sorry, not only data and AI maturity, but the right set of cybersecurity maturity model we should have into play. That comes with a center of excellence. So every organization should have a center of excellence, working on cybersecurity side. 20 to 28% of kind of recent investments are into that area only. So why not have a center of excellence wherein we take care of all the prioritizations of having all the technological advancement? Technology will come and go. They will definitely, that would be the culture. And majorly, what exactly we need to wipe out is the intensity and, let's say, the intention of having these malpractices. That would only come when we have a strategic investments into this. So I would strongly recommend to have a right maturity right maturity model for cybersecurity, and which should have everything into play, proper understanding on the entire ecosystem of our environment and the working culture and whatnot. And lastly, definitely leverage for the current timeline. If I talk about today's scenario, definitely we can leverage large language models to have co-pilot kind of environments. We can at least identify the context in right manner with right relevance, and we can at least prevent our spear phishing attacks. And and the training and mentoring of all the employees with a simulation environment. They should simulate every time, have simulation practices within the organizations too, so that they can plug and play these kind of tools, platforms, everything, and they can have mentoring within the company itself. Yeah.
Thank you, Ravi. Chris.
I was going to say,
And
preach,
Chris,
Ravi.
if I can ask you here as you have so much time, if you could also weave in an answer here, which is from the question there about cookie cutter security awareness is good, but it's not good enough. I know you're the expert, and maybe you could tell us and the audience what's really what's the game changer when it comes to security awareness.
Yeah. So I don't disagree with anything said. I think this has to be an add-on, right? So it's not a either or. It's not the tech stuff that Ravi brought up or the intelligence stuff that Mary brought up. I think it's a combination of all these things. And Rolf, basically, you took the words out of my mouth, man. When I talk about security awareness training, I'm not talking about going out and getting one of those SASs for phishing and putting the template in there and clicking go. That doesn't work. And it's actually been scientifically studied and proven that it doesn't work. I almost want to compare this to like if you work out, if you go to a gym, it's not you can't have a cookie cutter training package. Not everything works the same. I can't have the same workout that Mary does or that Ravi does. My goals might be different. So sit down. What are your goals for your company? And then you have to look at what kind of security programs are out there. And I'm huge into actual simulation. What Dr. Ravi said, you have to give. How can you expect these people to know what to do when a smish comes in if you don't smish them? Right? Or what to do when a real good looking fish comes in if you don't fish them, if you just use a template, or how they're going to handle a vish if you don't ever vish them. So it's kind of like saying, like, you don't want your first punch to be in a street fight. You got to go to a boxing gym and learn how to box, right? You got to teach these people how to defend during the cyber fight that's coming by doing real world simulations. And that's the only way you're going to have a good cybersecurity awareness culture. In addition to having that C-level from down, treating it like it's something super important, and they're not excluded. The companies that I work with, when you have the CEO publicly during one of their board meetings or during their all hands on meetings say, "Hey guys, I fell for the fish this month," I cannot tell you how amazing that affects everyone down below when they know the CEO isn't sitting there just letting everyone else get tested, that he actually gets tested and he's willing to say, "I fell for it." I've had massive companies we work with where the CEO did that, and across the board, I cannot tell you the effect that has on the employees. I can go on for this for hours, but I know my time's up. But
Powerful.
basically, that's what I would say.
One last thing.
Okay, yeah, make it quick, Ravi.
Yeah, so one last thing, we got a question from Joy that it was interesting, but we didn't address the remote workaround and all. So just to make it sure, once again, we discussed the zero trust kind of model and employments and deployments within the remote workarounds, and where I mentioned components like identity, data, endpoints, applications, network, infrastructure, everything has to be secured. Now, when it comes to data, we should classify, label, and protect it across the systems. When it comes to endpoints, we should monitor. So I think that is already addressed. Carlo would like to answer it in a
Thank you.
decent.
Thank you. No, this is amazing. I think what we'll do here is that we'll schedule a follow-up session because there's a lot to talk about, and it deserves to be spoken about publicly. And we've had tremendous audience engagement.
Mm-hmm.
As we wrap up, I want to first of all thank all of the panelists for their incredible insights. I feel from my standpoint, it's the more you know, the less you know, and I'm realizing how little I know, and that makes me hungry to learn more. So really big thank you to the audience as well for participating so actively. I wanted to invite everybody on the audience and folks that will listen to this in recorded version on YouTube in the future to come to our think tank. Find us on LinkedIn, on the same LinkedIn page, and participate. We are launching a critical infrastructure task force, and critical infrastructure is very vulnerable when it comes to remote workers, and it has disastrous, very dangerous consequences. I'd like also to bring up the comment that Joe Weiss put across, which is absolutely right. I'd like to talk more about the control system side as well. So look out for more of these. Please join us. Please join the Institute. Go to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe. And again, thanks very much to everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.